Greetings, Gothamites, and welcome to episode 92. The countdown to 100 is getting closer. Of I Am the Night, the weekly show where we break down every episode of Batman the Animated Series. This week, it's Mean Seasons, Season 3, Episode 13. And people who are watching us may see that once again, Adam, my usual partner in crime, is still in Bloodhaven. He's managed to stop Deathstroke, but Heartless is still out there. So with me tonight, instead, I have the King of Cool, the man who knows more about superheroes than just about anywhere else on Earth, particularly when it comes to what they look like, the King of Fashion, Mr. Brad Filicky. Welcome, sir.
Hey, welcome, and I'm glad to be here.
And hopefully not your first.
Podcast.
Yeah, hopefully not your last. I want you to be on this show a lot. Obviously, with Adam being busier with his work and stuff like that, it's a cool thing. So here we are talking about Mean Seasons, a very different episode. Give us your first thoughts. It's written by, story by Rich Vogel, script by Hilary Bader, and directed by Hiroyuki Adiyama. What did you make of the show?
I really enjoyed it. I really liked the kind of twist on the Calendar Man character instead of Calendar Man, Calendar Girl, and I thought that was a really interesting spin. I liked the character design, and a scene that I'm sure we'll talk about with the agent. That scene seemed very kind of ahead of its time, or prophetic in how it portrayed Hollywood. And
yes,
I really also enjoyed the little montage of TV shows coming up on the GWB, which was really funny as well. But yeah, and I actually wanted to ask you, since you're the resident Batman expert, what has that Calendar Girl ever been in the comics since this episode? Because this seemed like it was an original character for the episode.
See, I'm really glad you asked, because as you know, this is my first time watching any of season 3. I'm brand new to the final season, and I found this character fascinating. I thought, but she does seem familiar. So has she appeared in further issues of any of the Batman Adventures comics? Now, I do own every single one, so I am actually going to pull them out and look. But right now, I'm not sure. And if she isn't, it's a shame, because I think the character's got a lot of legs. They could do so much with her.
Yeah, me too. I'm surprised that they haven't. Especially
they may
since,
have.
with the comics, there's so much they can do. They're not bound by anything, so why not bring these characters back? So yeah, I think that would be. I would be interested to see them do that in the comics for sure.
Absolutely. Do you not find as well that her character, she's a former actress and model named Paige Monroe, who's out for vengeance on the people that she feels destroyed her career and her life? But do you not find that, again, for a TV show aimed at a family audience, the psychology, the issues, and like you said, that whole scene with the agent is so Me Too, but done in the 90s. It's prophetic, it's real, and still so valid even today.
Oh yeah, I think maybe that's one of the reasons why this series still resonates so much. When before we started recording, we talked a little bit about the Blu-ray collection, and I remember when that was announced, how it blew up the internet, how everybody was excited, and I think this series, I think this series is one of those things that got a lot of people into comics that are professionals in the industry now. This was kind of like their gateway, and it's reasons like this character and what happens to her, and I won't give it away right now, but what happens to her at the end when kind of the big twist is revealed at the end of the episode. It gives it almost felt like a Greek story, like a Greek.
Absolutely.
I don't want to say tragedy, but like
Greek tragedy,
yeah. It goes back to kind of what we talk a lot about when we talk about Sandman and the idea of comics as literature. And I felt like this show kind of was into that same kind of territory in real ways, in a way that, like you said, is still family oriented. So it's good when they what's that saying from Mary Poppins? A spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So they to give these lessons in these really fun ways.
And what a lesson. I mean, we also talked briefly about the baby doll character, who had a similar arc, but slightly different in the fact that she had a physical disability that made her life difficult. And Calendar Girl's almost the complete opposite. She was beautiful in every way, shape, or form, talented as a model, as an actress. She had her own sitcom. She was very successful. But we find by the end of the episode that her own downfall wasn't down to the people she kidnaps and abducts and tries to make pay. It's down to her own twisted self-image. And we see, sadly, every day people with anorexia and bulimia and these eating disorders who have a skewed, warped mirror image of themselves and don't see themselves the way the rest of the world sees them. And it's heartbreaking. But to tackle that in a 20-minute animated show is just brilliant.
And it was a very interesting study of the pressures put on women. And this generally, especially back in the 90s, a show like this would definitely think, okay, we're going to get boys when they come home from school. So again, it's like, let's give them a little lesson. Very, very well written. Subtle yet very powerful and undeniable. There's not denying what the kind of moral of the story was in this episode when it finally plays out.
Absolutely. I mean, Rich Fogel, we know, is a mainstay. He's been part of the Batman animated series since day one. But Hilary J. Bader came in for this season and for the in-between comics between season 2 and season 3, Batman Adventures: The Lost Years, which shows Dick Grayson leaving the Batcave and becoming Nightwing and learning new trades and new martial arts around the world. And it's brilliant that obviously we get the mainstay of Rich writing the plot, but Hilary writing the script as a female writer in Hollywood. And I think that's vitally important, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. As this is, they're dealing with what their own experiences has been in that world. And also going back to the fact that this was in the 90s, I think people in the comics world, it doesn't drive the culture then like it does now. Things like Comic-Con weren't as huge as there are now, things like that. So I think it reflects a lot of reflection of that own struggle too, with trying to make people understand these stories in a way that was really not kid stuff.
Well said. Absolutely. So the main plot, as we know, is Calendar Girl arrives, and this is wonderful. This is great inclusivity and diversity with her scantily clad beefcake henchmen, who I'll call them Calendar Girl and the Bimbo Boys. Why not? Let's go down that road. And she abducts a fashion announcer at a catwalk show, the head of Gotham Motors, and who's the third guy again? Her agent, I think. And the guy who fired her from the sitcom, who got the sitcom cancelled, and blames them for her misfortunes. But over the course of the show, she's a force to be reckoned with. I mean, I need to ask you. I mean, again, I've got to pull out the comics and find out if she does appear again. But is she a metahuman? Is it all stuff she learned when she was working in TV? Because some of her abilities look like magic, but then she also had the explosives and the gas bombs similar to Batman. I mean, that's why I think there's so much more they can do with the character.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. I really didn't even think about that. But that would be a great thing too. I could see, now that we kind of have the continuation of the series in the comics, doing like a 6-issue arc on just how she had trained and gained her knowledge. It seems like a real treasure trove of stuff that they could do.
I'd buy that.
Oh yeah, I think I would. I think I would too. Yeah, I think if DC, if you're listening, I think that'd be a good idea.
And if you don't have writers, you've got 2 right here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, call me up.
And if we can get Ty Templeton to draw it, wow, sign me up. But yeah, I mean, like you said, but it's also this episode does something really well in balancing the high action, because this is a really action-packed Batman on his toes. These hench guys are they're huge dudes, and the fact that there's 3 of them and Calendar Girl against him and Batgirl is brilliant. He's on his toes. But then we also have the mental and psychological part of the story as well. So this is just so much more than your average Saturday morning cartoon. And we say it every week, how could they keep this going? Because so far 13 episodes into a season that I was worried about because of the new designs. I thought they've simplified everything. Is it going to get childlike? There's yet to be a single bad episode of this show. Everything's been good, great, or fantastic.
And I think what the show does well is that I think its base was the Tim Burton Batman world. The theme song is kind of reminiscent of the Batman theme, and like his kind of vision of Gotham City was kind of the basis of it. But within that, they really made it something its own with the Art Deco design of the city. And
absolutely,
one thing about Tim Burton's Batman is that it felt kind of timeless, and so does this series. The design of everything seems timeless, and I I think that goes into making it so good. And you were talking about, oh, you were scared about the redesign, but I think even with the redesign, I think it turned out really good, and they really
it's
know how to
great.
tell.
Yeah,
And within that base that got people into it, they really are able to tell some really interesting Batman stories. And this episode really made me see how they really knew what they were doing. They really knew how to tell a good Batman story, what a good Batman story entails, and how to make it look original but completely timeless. And I think Batman's been around now for so long. I think that whole timelessness is something that's very important, and how the show perfectly runs that thin line to do everything right is incredible. Even with the new design, I think it turned out incredible.
I think it helped the animators as well, because that's the whole reason behind the redesign. I was reading in a book called Batman Animated by Chip Kidd and Paul Dini. Oh, it's a great book. And because obviously they could be making them streamlined, making them more hard black, hard white, made them much more easy to animate. So I actually think the animation may even have improved for the third season because of the simpler designs. But like you said, they didn't skimp on the storytelling. It's every bit as deep, layered, and textured as it's always been. And that's part of the marvel of this show. I mean, anyone who watches I Am the Night or listens on a regular basis knows Adam and I say that outside of the comics themselves, this show is the best version of Batman you can get anywhere. And I mean that not just with the animated series, but with the Batman Adventures comics as well, and with the news that they're finally collecting their first whole volume and specials in a mighty omnibus.
Oh, nice.
That might be something I need to save my money on, because I've just got the individual floppies, and some of those are worth a lot of money, particularly Adventures 12, the first ever comics appearance of Harley Quinn. So look out for that, listeners, readers. Batman Omnibus Volume 1. If you've never read the Batman Adventures, you are missing out. It's every bit as good as the show. Every bit as good as the show. So let's talk about the cast. I mean, again, as you know, you've heard a few episodes. Andrea Romano, the casting director, is a genius. She can get the biggest names of stage and screen to do bit parts. Case in point, the two of the abduction victims that Calendar Girl kidnaps. One of them is Dennis Haysbert, who, just look up the name, a guy who's been on just about everything TV and movie wise, but with real nerd cred for people like Brad and I, President Palmer in 24 and the Lord Almighty in Lucifer for a bit part. The second bit part, playing Donna Day, the fashion guru who's the first kidnap victim, was the legendary Tippi Hedren, the star of The Birds, Golden Globe winner for that, and the star of Marnie, two classic Alfred Hitchcock films. And again, just those alone, but so many TV and movie appearances throughout the decades. Bit parts. Now, let's talk about Sailor Ward, who played Paige Monroe, the Calendar Girl. Movie appearances with the legendary Tommy Lee Jones in Double Jeopardy and The Fugitive. She's in Day After Tomorrow, Gone Girl, the second Independence Day movie. She's Joe Danville in CSI in New York and Dana Mosier in FBI. I mean, she's been in House, one of these faces that as soon as you see her, oh yeah, I know her. I've seen her in everything. How do they do it? And again, the book alludes to the fact that once a few episodes of season 1 aired, Andrea Romano's phone was ringing off the hook. Hey, can I be in an episode of Batman the Animated Series? And with episodes like this, you can see why, right?
Tippi Hedren, that is
Yeah,
a crazy get.
yeah.
That's impressive. I mean,
I knew
and
straight away.
yeah, and I love that she was able to get people like Jane Whedon to and I know you talked about her in a past episode, and it's like that's pretty. I almost feel like they could do a book just on the cast.
Oh,
You know
easily.
how fun would that be? I mean, that would be people would just I think their jaws would drop. And
Yeah.
yeah, and Dennis, my introduction to Dennis Heisler was President Palmer in 24, and then
Hell
he's
of an
blown up
actor.
since then, and that's another. I'm surprised that I didn't. He's got such a memorable voice that
Great
I'm
voice.
surprised that I didn't
See,
recognize
I
him
heard,
off the top of
I
my
thought
head.
I know that voice, and I knew Tippi Hedren's voice as well. I didn't recognize Sailor Ward, but she's got the perfect voice for the character. But
Mm,
wow,
yeah, and she's another one. Look at that lineup. That's yeah, we need a book on the casting in for this series for sure.
hey,
It's
well, listen, I just have to go through my notes for every episode of I Am the
yeah,
Night. It's all
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Nichelle Nichols, untold legends have
Oh
appeared
yeah,
in this show.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So great episode. Again, very poignant ending. So when she's finally taken down, and the beauty part is her costume design is fantastic. It's just a plain white featureless mask with the eye slits, and a one color costume which changes every time you see her. And we think because of her agent that it's because she's had too much surgery and she's completely disfigured. But by the end of the show, again, guys, if you haven't watched this episode, pause or stop the episode of I Am the Night now. Go watch it and come back because this is the ending. There's nothing wrong with her physically. Her scars are on the inside, and that hit home, didn't it?
Oh yeah, it kind of reminded me of the classic Twilight Zone episode where uh, the woman gets her bandages taken off and she looks and she's beautiful and all the doctors are the ones that look like creatures. That kind of it had a little bit of flashback to
Classic.
that in a way,
Yeah,
and it just it yeah it's another one of those moments that resonated and it was like, oh, that's a very powerful point that this supposedly kid show is making, and then that's I really do like it when animation hits those moments that you say, oh wow, there's something deeper going on. It's why I like things like Robotech back when I was growing up. There was a lot more under the surface, and this is the same way. And
absolutely.
I think there was a lot of kids that came home and like, oh wow, you know, I remember, and I think this came out when I was in high school, and that was at a point when I wasn't collecting, and I would have friends that would say, oh, you have to watch it, you have to watch it, it's really good. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to it. That was before the days of Blu-rays and things like that and streaming. But I I think these is things like that part in this episode are the reasons why people kept saying, "Oh, you have to watch this." It's what draws people in. It's that payoff that it's just not just disposable entertainment.
Absolutely.
Like it's
Yeah.
not junk food. It's a solid meal.
Oh yeah, this is a la carte. This is
Mhm,
Michelin star animation without a shadow of a doubt.
mhm.
So, with that being said, did you have any lasting impact? Anything that you took away from the episode Mean Seasons as a whole?
I think the lesson was basically like you said, just the scars were in the inside, and how do we deal with those internal scars, and the pressures that are put on women to be constantly young and beautiful, and that uh, that scene with the agent and her getting
Mm,
fired just because she turned
definitely.
30. Well, what do you want me to do? She turned 30, and that you think that as somebody who's past 30, you look back on that even it's just
Long
it's
time
yeah,
ago.
and it's crazy that that stuff still goes on, but but I think that the lesson of the, like we're saying, the internal scars, and how kind of prophetic this episode was in those ways. I think that's what I take away with me from this episode.
Absolutely. Mine were more or less the same kind of thing. Again, our hive mind is a thing of pure power. But I also wanted to touch on the great little character interactions between Tara Strong, Tara Charandoff back in those days, and Kevin Conroy, where again he is Batman. He's a great man, but he's still a man, and all he can see is, oh, she's a pretty girl. And the way Batgirl takes him down to, listen, she was your age, old man, when this happened, and little character moments like that add so much depth to the heroes that we know and love without taking away from them, but showing that they are still human beings and fallible. Little things like that again elevate this show so much for me.
I'm glad you brought Batgirl up, because I think that and I've watched a few episodes as well getting ready for this, and it seemed like in the episodes that I watched, Batgirl was more of the Robin type, and I think that almost works better than having the Robin things that she brought into it. And like you said a couple episodes back about how she's the actual brain, because she becomes the brain center for basically the whole DC universe, and maybe she's kind of not manipulating Batman, but pulling more of the strings than you may realize. And she had my favorite line in the episode where she says, "Oh, you better run," or "Oh, you might want to run." Reminded me of of the movie Megan, and that little scene. It's like, oh, maybe that's good. I got it. But yeah, I think she's a great addition to the series. Yeah, I think that she does some of the heavy lifting, because she can kind of be the audience entrance into these batch of episodes. So yeah, I think she's extremely important, and probably some of the best interplay between those two characters I've seen, whether it's in movie, animation, comics, or whatever. So yeah, I think that was definitely a highlight of the episode.
It's just so strong. The writing, Shirley Walker's music, the voice casting, the Kevin Conroy nothing else need be said. Nothing else need be said. Yeah. Miss him every day. But another strong entry into the Batman the Animated Series canon. So what else can we say?
Yep. Not a bad one in the batch.
Yep, there you go. So let's then tell everyone else out there watching, listening, where they can hear the voice powers of Mr. Brad Filicky and read your work, my friend.
You can find me writing reviews, news at dccomicsnews.com. Occasionally have some stories over at Josh's other site, Mark with the Movie Blog. You can find me on the DC Comics News podcast and the Mad Love Harley Quinn podcast when we do start re-recording it. And you can follow me on Twitter, or X as it's called now, I guess, FlickyB1. Where can people find you, Steve?
Ugh, X. Ugh.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
Never mind, eh? And hopefully we'll have you back on an episode or 5 of I Am the Night as well. Yeah. So that'd be something you really want to do. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. As for myself, this show, most weeks with my offspring who's out saving Bloodhaven at the moment, but occasionally with the odd guest star as well, like Brad, or like last week with James Atias, the assistant editor over at Dark Knight News. But you can catch this show, the main DC Comics News podcast, the Harley Quinn cast, when it comes back on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you find your podcasts. Thank you, Good Pods, for rating us number 1 and number 2 across the comics universe. That was a wonderful surprise. And you can catch DC Comics News, Dark Knight News, and Fantastic Universes on Twitter at DC Comics News, at DKNewsCom, and at Fan Universes. For myself, at ElStevo, EL_STEEVO. But until you do, this is Brad Filicky. He is the Night. Together we are the Night, and this has been the I Am the Night podcast.
Read
more
comics
and watch
more
Batman.
Batman.
We shall return.